Okay, remember we had a couple interesting things, and anyway, we'll see how it goes. So, Lindsay Ball is right there. What do you remember about Lindsay? Chickens. Okay. And she was one of our exercise people, wasn't she? Okay, so running groups, that will be an awesome person to look at. Okay, Michaela wasn't here last time, so Michaela, why don't you introduce yourself to our new friends?
Hi, I'm Michaela Besant. I'm an ancient Near Eastern
Did you
Studies.
say Besant? I've been saying Besant.
Well, it depends on which side of the family you ask.
Okay.
Yeah. But the American side says Besant.
Okay.
I think Besant sounds correct. But yeah, so I'm an ancient nursing studies major, but I'm on the ballroom touring company, so sometimes I look like this, sometimes I don't. But yeah,
I
so.
mean, big earrings, lots of makeup, that's not your standard.
Students don't come to our classes like this all the time. No, yeah, so I love to dance, and I love ancient history.
Okay.
So.
Madison Brasher was not here last time, but you're
Brazier.
Brazier.
Yes.
Okay, tell us about yourself.
I'm an English major, freshman. Cool things about me. I'm in a drawing class with Torin. I really like traveling. I've been to the UK. It's cool.
Okay, so she can be one. People who've been in London before, or any of these cities, identify yourself, because that's the person you want to kind of link up with on your free time. Or, you know, what I was thinking of doing, excuse me for interrupting for a minute, you know, Learning Suite lets us have online discussion groups and things. I thought maybe what we'd want to do is have a discussion group for each city. And so people kind of throw out ideas, things you're interested in, so you can see who's interested in going to Harry Potter, who's interested in doing whatever. I'm just trying to kind of not troubleshoot, but brainstorm on how we can make this efficient, because you do have free time in each city where, you know, I'm not micromanaging your life. But back to Madison Brasher.
Is there anything else I need to like?
Well, I mean, we wanted some interesting and some funny things about yourself, like, do you like chickens? Now, I know that sounds strange, but we have two people who likes chickens.
Really? Dang, I really love peanut butter. So.
Okay, she's the peanut butter lady.
It's like my favorite, like ice cream flavors. Peanut butter is usually, you know, if you add peanut butter swirl to it, it's magnificent. I love Disney World. Love Disney.
Okay,
I don't know.
that's good. That's good. Okay, Janae's over here. She was here. What do you remember about Janaea Brown?
She's taking her
Irish dance class.
River dancing. So she's our half dancer. So we have, what, 3 people on the dance team, and she's our half dancer. She's dancing, but she's not on the dance team, right, Janaea? Okay, what else do you remember about her? Does anyone remember what she was studying? Geography.
With
Tourism was kind of her objective.
Oh, yeah.
Good, good. Okay, Caitlin, there in the back. What do you know about Caitlin?
Greek New Testament.
We know in her major, she's Greek New Testament, so she's one of the 7 actual ancient Near majors majors.
She likes dinosaurs.
She was the paleontologist. So in the British Museum, there's some paleontology. So, you know, you don't need to leave when the rest of us leave at 1 o'clock. You're welcome to stay there and enjoy your bones and things. She also is very political. This is a running joke. We have each other in another class, Judaism and Early Christianity and Classical Near East, where I went kind of on this political rampage in January. And she reminded me that being Christian means you respect all sides. sides. Okay, Julia. Her name is Chu, not Chow. What do you remember about Julia?
Greek New Testament.
Okay, so you're an ancient Near Society Greek New Testament person.
I have a picture of her on my phone wearing an Israeli flag.
Okay.
Accurate.
Are you minoring in modern Hebrew as well? Okay, so she are both doing that. Something about her life.
She's the same president.
Oh, she's scared of bumpy things.
Bumpy
Yes!
things. She has trichophobia.
Trypophobia.
Trichophobia. Okay.
Yeah.
So don't put rough textures on. Camille Ensign. There you are. What do you remember about Camille? Do you remember anything about Camille?
Folk dance.
So she's one of the full dancers, not the half dancer. Okay.
Yeah, I am a folk dancer. I'm an Irish dancer.
She's teaching Janaea.
Yes.
Okay.
And my major is geography. So I'm in the travel and tourism, and so I want to specialize in disabilities with travel and tourism.
Oh, that's cool.
Specifically ASL.
Okay. So she and Janaea have a couple things in common, not just geography and tourism, but the whole Irish thing. And do you do ASL?
I do, I
Did
have
you
a
do an
niece that's
ASL
deaf.
mission or just?
My niece is deaf and my
Okay.
sister-in-law's an interpreter.
Okay, well, that's something to remember. Camille does ASL. Okay, Devin Hart. What do you remember about Devin? She's our museum person. Okay, so she will be interested not just in the particular things we're looking at. She may be hanging out in the museum with you. For instance, in Munich, we have 3 museums we go to together, but that afternoon when some of you may be doing an excursion, there are several other museums. I've got a list of things that I thought you would be interested in, Devin. Okay, Scott Hendrickson is not with us and probably will not be till our travel meeting during finals week. That's because Scott is in Young Ambassadors and they have their rehearsal. And hi Scott. So Scott will be figuring, so Jake will not be the lone man in the Garden of Europe. Yeah, I guess I never would have been, I would have been there too, but you know, anyway, enough. Rachel Hogan, one of our 2 Rachels.
She's from
There you are.
Connecticut.
Okay, so Rachel Hogan is from Connecticut. Do you remember what she studies? She's linguistics. Okay, she likes all kinds of languages. So, did you say you did a little French or Italian or anything?
No, my other 2 are Spanish and Russian.
Okay, so you won't be able to bail me out in any of these places. Okay, Rachel Huntsman. Remember about Rachel?
Otters.
Otters.
But not
Okay.
penguins.
She likes penguins. That was from a younger age. She's my daughter. That's something. Ancient Near Eastern Studies, Greek New Testament.
Modern Hebrew.
Modern Hebrew Minor. Okay. Other Inman. Who knows anything about Jake?
He's married.
So anyway, I guess Scott's the one man in the Garden of Europe, not Jake and Huntsman. Okay, he's Ancient Near Eastern Studies, Hebrew Bible. Okay. Not just because he's married, doesn't mean you have to just pretend he's not there and not know anything about him. Okay. Say he served his mission in Montana.
He likes Tucanos.
I do like Tucanos. I didn't say that last time, but
Yeah, he didn't say that last time, so that must have been from some other piece of information. Elise Jacobson, she's one of my pictureless people. Is she even
oh,
here?
she's one of the ones the video's for.
Is she in Courtney? Is she in Cornell or is she in California?
California.
Okay. Anyway, you know what I'm gonna have them do? Remind me to have them all email me a little description of themselves, and next week when we do this, we'll pretend we'll hold up and send us a picture of each.
Cardboard cutout.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's time for the Mansfield sisters, and we're purposely gonna do Mandy first.
Yes.
Okay. Mandy, what do you remember about Mandy besides she was Chloe's little sister and always good second?
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter. And in a moment, no, we're going to get the hard stuff out of the way. After we do our history lecture, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some changes in our itinerary that will make Harry Potter completely doable for a few of you. Okay, so anyway, anything else about Chloe besides the fact that she's not Chloe, but Mandy's name? Chloe was her middle name.
Yes, I remember.
Okay. Anything else? Tell us something more about yourself, Mandy.
I really love cooking and food, so I have like different food goals for every place we go.
Okay.
And one of them in France, I want to go to Wateree and get the macarons.
I'll go with
Okay. So, Jessica Mansfield, Sister Mansfield the Elder. Do you know about her?
I can't answer. Just kidding. I don't even remember what I said.
I don't either.
Are you English? I'm English major.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
English.
That's why I was thinking.
Mandy, can you tell us something funny about your sister or memorable about your sister?
She said she likes Harry Potter, but not as much as me. But she also said she likes old books. She loves books.
Oh, yeah, you're
Okay.
amazing.
So, I have added to the British Library Day an hour-and-a-half tour of the treasures of the museum. So we will see some old books. So those will be from Mandy. Okay, is it Jody? No, it's Pamela. Okay, Pamela. Do you remember anything about Pamela? She's a dancer as well. Okay.
Well, that too.
Tell us one more thing about yourself besides the dancing.
I served my mission in Maryland.
Okay.
I have a great love for Maryland. Anything.
You know the history of Lord Baltimore and how the colony was founded as a refuge for Catholics?
I've heard it before.
Mhm.
I'm
That's the kind of odd thing I know about. So.
not. My favorite thing is their flag. I
Yeah,
think
it's
if
cool.
you have anything with the Maryland flag
Right,
on it, I
right.
love it.
It is a cool flag.
It's the best.
Okay, Sister Minnick, Jolyn Minnick. What do you know about her?
Supernatural.
Supernatural. She's Ancient Christian Studies Hebrew Bible. Okay, so she's a singer. Will you be going to Evensong with me one of the nights we're in London?
Sure.
You're not Harry Pottering all the time? Okay. Natasha Ramirez. There you are, Natasha. Never think about Natasha? I think we're wearing out by that point. What was that?
She also dances.
Okay, so we have dancers everywhere. Okay. What are you studying, Natasha?
Communications.
Communications. Okay. Good. Now, Cassie Ringer is our friend from UVU. I still don't have a picture of you. Okay. Her uncle used to be my boss. Now he's boss of more people. he was the director of the Kennedy Center for a long, 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 long time. You've been to England before, haven't you? Because he's there all the time.
Yeah, I went to London with them.
Yeah, so she's another London resource. Okay, she'll really know how to get around and how to maximize your time. What are you studying? You're at UVU, right?
Yeah, I'm studying early childhood education.
Okay, good. All right, Caitlin Stone. So we have 2 Rachels and 2 Caitlins. Caitlin, you weren't with us last time. Were you here last time?
I was here.
You were here. Okay, it was Rebecca that wasn't. Remember anything about Caitlin?
She dirt bikes.
She's a dirt biker.
Yep.
Okay. What are you studying, Caitlin?
Communications.
So we have 2 communications. Okay.
Mhm.
And then Rebecca Westerlin, she's either Cornell,
Cornell.
or California. And then Emily Kuro. What do you remember about Emily?
From Connecticut.
She's from Connecticut.
So you're both from Connecticut?
Yeah, we grew up
Her dad was my
together.
bishop for a while.
And did you know this when you signed up?
I didn't know she was in the class when I signed up. No. Or
Okay.
to it now.
Okay, cool. And you graduated in April?
In
already?
December.
December, okay. All right, now, because I realized that some of the reading for today, first of all, has everyone gotten her book?
No.
Okay, our book's still on the way?
Yes.
Okay, Jake will once again scan and post the chapters on Egypt for next week. We've got to get our books, okay? Because this is so new for some of you, I thought I was, making it easy by giving you the thing. This time and this time only, we're going to lecture first and quiz second, okay? And I think that will help those of you for whom this is completely new have a better feel for how to learn the names and the places and why they're important. Okay, but for next week for Egypt, I'll have this up as I did this week. Friday night, it was Friday at 11:43, but it will be up Friday night. And then when you're doing your reading that weekend or Monday night, look for the names and know that when we come in, we'll have a quiz right away, okay? But this time, I thought you actually had someone intercede for you last hour. Rachel was in my office. Now, this is a lot of stuff for people who've never done this before. Let's go ahead
With
and
me,
pull
I
this
don't know
up.
if he's gonna do the quiz.
And after we've gone through the lecture and gotten the reading quiz out of the way, I'm going to pull up Learning Suite and show you some of the resources I'm kind of assembling and what I'm planning to do with the graded part of our class for the tour. Because we have 3 credits that you get and they have academic goals, but we are going to be so freakingly busy. I'm actually going to set things up so that your museum reports and things you can draft in May before you go. So I'm going to have a list of things so you can pick an artifact in each museum, write your 3 to 4 paragraphs, and all I'll ask you to do on the tour is add a paragraph what you thought when you actually saw it. It's also part of how I'm planning to organize the museum groups, and I'll talk about that more later. But I just want to let you know, this is kind of a work in progress because it's the first time BYU has done this particular trip. And so you just have to kind of swing with me as we adjust. Now, what I had you read for today were a number of different civilizations that occurred in the area that is called historically Mesopotamia. Now, Mesopotamia is from a Greek word, which means the land between the rivers. It's modern-day Iraq. So you have the Tigris, which is this northern river, and the Euphrates River. And the land between that was the scene of a lot of early civilizations. And so those are 4 names you should know by the end of this hour. The Sumerians, who are the earliest, the Akkadians, Babylonians, and the Assyrians. Now, this slide, you don't need to really know anything from this slide, but I'm just kind of setting up why 2 of our earliest civilizations in the world were in Mesopotamia and Egypt. I've always thought if I were, Abel or Seth, okay, Mom and Dad just been kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and I had to start civilization. My 2 choices are the French Riviera and Hawaii. They are not Iraq or Egypt, okay? So it just seems like those would be easier and more beautiful places to live, okay? Closer to the Eden, fruits and spontaneously and, not all the work. But it's really interesting that although there were lots of people settled in surrounding regions where we have what we call rainfall agriculture, things just grew, civilization developed in these areas that we call marginal lands. These are lands that are productively very fertile if you work at it, if you irrigate them, build dikes, build dams, work together, okay? I guess the problem is if we lived in the French Riviera or Hawaii, we'd hardly even wear clothes, we'd just run around and surf all the time and pick fruit, right? I mean, we wouldn't have to work together and really develop civilization like it did in Egypt and Mesopotamia. You can kind of ignore this stuff about the difference between Egypt and Mesopotamia. I just swiped the slide from IAS 201. Some of you may recognize that one. Now, one of the things we're going to see again and again when it comes to Mesopotamian artifacts is their very unique letter system, writing system, okay? By the way, before I go any farther, 2 of the 4 so-called cradles of civilization are places we're studying. Does anyone know what the other 2 are? It's the Indus River Valley in what's now Pakistan, but it was India, so it's early India, and the Yellow or Yangtze River Valley in China. Interestingly, they're all river valleys. They're all what we call the marginal lands. Now back to cuneiform. Cuneiform comes from a word in Latin which means wedge shape. And that's because what they did is they used clay, and I put this on the review sheet, clay which is a very durable material, and they used a little stylus that looked like a wedge, and they'd imprint these shapes and they make their letters out of it. Clay durable, Huntsman? What's wrong with that? What it meant by durable is once clay is fired, it may break, but it never dissolves. Whereas paper and parchment rot. Okay, we only have ancient documents on paper, papyrus, because they were buried in the dry sands of Egypt. Most of the parchments in other parts of the world rotted over time. So that's what your book meant when it talked about clay tablets being very durable. But you don't have to have ink with this, right? So you have a clay tablet, you stamp it, then you fire it, and then it's sealed. So this is how they developed it. So here is a head. It's a little guy. And then the guy's head falls over, and then it kind of becomes stylized. And then you use the wedge shape to make that stylized fallen over head guy. And eventually you get to the Sumerian word for man. Okay. I don't think any of my IAS people do any Akkadian, right? Okay. That's something you do in grad school. You don't do that in real life. And I don't do any of it. I remember taking my Greek reading exam for my master's exam, and there's a guy in ancient history at Penn next to me doing Akkadian. And it looked like a chicken had jumped on an ink pad. It was just kind of, you know, chicken lovers. Okay, your chickens got loose, and they ran all over a clay thing. Now there are 2 other words I put in the study guide that I want you to be familiar with, because we'll see these in the museums. One is a stela, or stele. Sometimes we'll see it S-T-E-L-E, which is the way Greek should be spelled. And sometimes it will be an obelisk. So a stela would be like, I'm dating myself, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Did you see that? Okay. Yeah. You had the stele, the black thing. And so it's thin, it's thick enough that it's not going to break, but you can set up a big monumental stele and do inscriptions on it. Now an obelisk is thicker. So if you think of like those things in Egypt, okay, the obelisk are those tall pylons. But we will see both of those as stone versions of the clay tablets of cuneiform. Julia?
Does the obelisk typically have writing on like all 4 sides?
Not always. Not always. Sometimes it's just on the front side. Okay, so that's enough of that. Now, for the different places you looked at for today, Mesopotamia is very interesting, and if this were a class where we're going to compare and contrast to Egypt, we'd actually talk about the differences and the similarities. Egypt is a very static civilization because it's isolated, and so it didn't change much. But Mesopotamia is right in the middle of the Middle East, and people are always coming and going. And so you have layers of civilizations. One place is invaded by another group, another group, another group. So you have different languages, different ethnic groups, and yet there's a certain cultural continuity, because the newcomers say, wow, these previous people had a really cool civilization, we're going to adopt things. So the earliest one is the Sumerian, and you do not need to know dates, okay? Just know the order. The Sumerian is the earliest. It's followed by the Akkadian. There's a brief period in here that doesn't show up on the chart where one of the old Sumerian cities, kind of revives and is important for a while. And then we have what's called the Old Babylonian, and then we have the Neo-Assyrian, and then I should have one more bullet point on there. We'll have a Neo-Babylonian. Neo is just a funky word for new, okay? So this is the New Assyrian Empire. We're going to have a new have one as well. Jake, will you remind me to add a bullet point to that slide? I'm gonna try to post these slides ahead of time as well. So maybe you can have something like this to review. So you'll have the book. You're not gonna have to learn every single word in 3 chapters. You're only looking for the words in the review sheet. But maybe you have the PowerPoint posted as well. That would make it a little easier. Because you may find something on here and not want to have to dig through all 3 chapters to find the name again. So would that be helpful?
Yeah.
It would mean I also won't be desperately putting this together at 5 to 4 as I was today. Okay, so let's just talk about the first group real quickly. The Sumerians lived in the southern part of Mesopotamia. So this whole thing is Mesopotamia. This is Sumeria. Here's a little statue. We'll actually see this guy. He is in the Louvre, and this is their culture. They were the ones who invented cuneiform. Their language is not related to any other language we know. Okay, so it's a very unique language, and they left clay tablets galore. Most of them were administrative documents. The king of each of these cities would have records of how much agriculture they produced, how much trade they had. There's some religious documents, that kind of thing. They're pretty modest states. It's what we call a city-state. So Ur just controlled the territory around it. Uruk, those of you who've done Epic of Gilgamesh, this is where everybody of Gilgamesh is from. Lagish Kish. So they're modest states. They're not imperialistic by any stretch. And that's basically all you'll need to know. One of the things I always remember when I'm looking at Sumerian artifacts is they love to have big eyes. Sumerian statues, carvings always have big eyes. This is something my friends, the Byzantines, Greek-speaking Christian Romans, later during the Middle Ages, because the eyes were seen as the windows of the soul. Okay, and Byzantine art emphasizes the spiritual over the physical. Okay, this is just kind of a gee whiz thing in case Aunt Bertha asks you about this. Most of you don't know Aunt Bertha. Aunt Bertha, everyone has one in their family. Aunt Bertha is this, know-it-all aunt at every family gathering and reunion. It's talking about Josephus and journal discourses and all this kind of deep stuff. Okay, so anyway, in case Aunt Bertha says, you're going to the Louvre and the British Museum to see ancient Near Eastern artifacts? What do you know about the Sumerians? And you can say, Aunt Bertha, their system's based on 6 and not 10. And she'll stop talking because she won't know what you're talking about. So they're the ones, that's why we have 60 minutes, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour. It's because of the Sumerians. I don't know if early Sumerians had 6 fingers rather than 5. I don't know how this happened. Okay, but that's how their system's set up. Now the Akkadians are a more interesting group. The Akkadians are what we call Semites. Now this comes from the name Shem. Noah, according to the Bible, had 3 sons, Sem, Japheth, and Ham. And all of the descendants of Shem are called Semites. They include the Hebrews, the Jews, they include the Arabs, and these Akkadian friends. And so the Akkadians moved into Mesopotamia, kind of took over the Sumerians and adopted their writing system and their architectural styles and some of their artistic styles as well. So as I say here, they borrowed writing culture and much of their religion from the earlier Sumerians. But whereas the Sumerians had small city-states, the Akkadians, and we'll see which king did this in a moment, they developed the first what we call pan-Mesopotamian empire. They controlled all of Mesopotamia and even into Syria a little bit. Now one of the names on your review sheet was this guy named Sargon. So that's a name you should know. Sargon was the one who made the Akkadians into an empire, and this is in fact Brother Sargon. Because when we see these artifacts, if you know something about who the person was, it will mean something to you. He had the title King of the 4 Quarters of the World, because as far as the Akkadians were concerned, he controlled everything that was important. Now, they get their name from their capital city, Akkad, but the Akkadians ended up building a city called Babylon. So they're kind of the forerunners of the Babylonians. And that's a name you probably do know from the Bible. Okay, you don't need to know his grandson. I have it in square brackets just because as I was doing my reading, there is an artifact that I thought you can only have so much fun. So you don't need to know more than a couple names per civilization. They develop taxation, that's what empires do. They steal money from people, standardize their counting, their writing, etc. Now, as I said, there's a Sumerian city named Ur, which after the Akkadian Empire fell, kind of revived Sumerian fortunes for a while. By the way, here are the big eyes I was telling you about. So this is a revised Sumerian period, and it actually was an empire. They kind of followed the model of the Akkadians in controlling more than one city. So they had this dark brown area, and then they influenced this light brown area. This is an artist reconstruction. We'll see a picture of one in a moment. They're the ones who were big on what we call ziggurats. Have any of you heard that name before from honors history or something? Ziggurats were an attempt in an area made of plains to have hills or mountaintop sanctuaries. Similar in some ways to pyramids, but different in others. Pyramids are funerary, have one use. These are for worship. Complex bureaucracy in the southern Mesopotamia. You don't need to know anything more about them except big eyes. Just remember big eyes. Here is one of those ziggurats that has survived until today from this period. Okay, now Old Babylonia, another Semitic group called the Amorites, come and pick up where the Akkadians had left off. And they take that Babylonian city that the Akkadians from Akkad nearby had built, and they developed a pretty big empire, not quite as big as the Akkadian Empire. But they were particularly famous for a king named Hammurabi. What did Hammurabi do? Law code. And we will actually see this document, okay, in the British Museum. It's very, very famous. So here's Brother Hammurabi. Here he is with one of his ministers up top of this stele, and it has on it in cuneiform the law code. Why this is so significant for those of us who do ancient Near Eastern studies is it provides an interesting parallel, in fact, precedent for the law of Moses. Some of you know the law of Moses, besides being about not being able to eat a ham and cheese sandwich or shellfish, has a lot to do with justice. It has very strict penalties for sins. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, you probably heard that. When this was discovered, Christian archaeologists are the ones who discovered it, they were really excited because it showed a parallel with what we knew from the Bible. One of the things I thought was interesting, and this is not my period, okay, so I kind of know some basic things about this. I think it's Monica Phillips. She's actually applying for a job here. She's at the University of Chicago right now. She's really a great young scholar. She pointed out that we don't know that this law code was actually ever enforced. There's some real inconsistencies and problems, and we actually wonder if it was meant as an idealized standard. Which was interesting. I wonder if the law of Moses was ever meant to truly be lived completely, or if it was just kind of holding up an ideal. And then our Jewish friends just got a little excited and tried to live it. I don't know. I'm sorry, I have a Christian bias here. And I love Jewish people, but theologically I'm a Christian. So anyway, this was not something you read about. You read about the new Assyrian Empire. I just want to let you know where Assyria came from. If Sumer, or Sumeria, was southern Mesopotamia, and Babylon's right in the middle, northern Mesopotamia grew up around a city called Ashur. Now Ashur is actually the name of their god. So they named the city after their god, and then their country, Assyria, comes from that name as well. Did you know there are still Assyrians today? When you hear stories about the Christians in Iraq that are being killed by ISIS, they are Assyrians, most of them. There's some in the south called Chaldeans, which is another name you read about for today. But the Assyrians were the second or third people to accept Christianity. The first were people up here called the Armenians, and the Assyrians, who were so vicious in the Old Testament, became Christians in the late 2nd, early 3rd century, and have been Christians ever since. They even still speak their language, which is really quite amazing. That city Mosul, where ISIS is being fought right now, is in what's called the Nineveh Plain, and that's where the Assyrian Christians have their headquarters. Anyway, don't hang out with me when we're not in museums, because you'll just hear this kind of stuff nonstop, because this is what I do. So if this is boring to you, hang out with people who know London. Okay. But it's their position. They became a military force in the new Assyrian Empire, but in this period, they become important because they're on the crossroads. People going to Syria, people coming from Iran, people coming from Samaria, people going up to Armenia. So they became quite prosperous. You don't need to know this. I just was excited for a couple of you because we had done this in AS 201. There's another group called the Chaldeans who move into Mesopotamia in this period, and they're the ones who are going to form the new Babylonian Empire. But this is how the Assyrians, who started out as kind of a commercial group, became a military power. They just started to expand in every direction. So they eventually conquered Babylonia. They finally moved into Syria, etc. And in this period, 950 to 605 BC, the new Assyrian Empire became one that you probably have heard about, and you should know about because it really impacts biblical history. The new Assyrian Empire and the new Babylonian empires are, according to the prophet Isaiah, tools in the hands of Jehovah in chastising his people. The Assyrians destroyed the northern kingdom of Israel. Remember, after Solomon, the Israelites were divided into two countries, northern kingdom of Israel, southern kingdom of Judah, and the new Babylon Empire destroys the southern kingdom of Judah. Now, you learned a couple of these names on your review sheet, and let's see if you picked up anything about them, because these are people that we will, this one's not one that you'll really remember that much, but there's going to be a monument we'll see of him. Shalmaneser. This is not one I would have asked you if I'd done the reading quiz at the beginning, because there's not something real distinctive about him. Does anyone remember anything that I wrote about that in the review sheet? Yes?
He overexpanded.
Yeah, so he got excited and expanded, but overextended it, and so the country started collapsing on itself. Which led to the next guy, Tiglath-Pileser, or how does that Stratford say it? Pileser, okay, good, I'm glad I wasn't wrong. Okay, he revived and expanded the empire. He's an early enemy of Israel. He's not the one who wipes out Israel, but he begins a political device to kind of humble his enemies. What does he do? When he conquers a group, he deports people. So he takes all their leaders and their merchants and their priests and moves them somewhere else. So if you conquer Babylon, you take all the leading Babylonians and you move them up here. When you conquer Israel, you take 10 tribes and move them up here. The idea being they won't be able to rebel as much if they're not in their homelands. And the common people that you don't deport won't have any leaders. So you leave the peasants to farm and pay taxes, but the leaders you take. And this is significant to us as Latter-day Saints because we have a certain investment in the idea that Israel has been scattered. Okay, and so the 10 tribes, so said, are groups of Israelites that were deported by the Assyrians. Now, on the other hand, Sennacherib, these last two Assyrians are the ones you really should know. They're significant historically, but they also have lots of artifacts we're going to see about them. Sennacherib, what did he do? Okay, yes, he conquered the northern territory of Israel, and then he attacked Judah at the time of the prophet Isaiah. He did not take Jerusalem. It was saved by an angel. The people of Jerusalem woke up one day, and the Assyrians were gone. A plague had broken out, and they fled. But he did destroy a lot of Judean cities. So he didn't take Jerusalem, but he destroyed a place called Lachish. And we will see the engravings. The Assyrians kind of depicted their siege of Lachish, and it's brutal. This is where the ISIS folks got their ideas. They loved to impale people. What they would do when they were besieging a city is everyone they captured, they would impale, or they'd chop off their heads, or they'd mutilate, and they'd put all around the city so the people who were being besieged would be frightened and give up. Okay, so if Tiglath-Pileser started the practice of deportation, Sennacherib started the idea of military terrorism. Okay. Now the last guy is pretty calm in some ways. His name is Ashurbanipal, but he does two things. One is he had a great library, so he collected all the Babylonian and Sumerian and Akkadian texts, gathered them, and that's why we have most of them, because we found his library. But he also put together this wonderful depiction of a lion hunt, which we will see in the British Museum. Okay, so if I had to focus on two of those four names, it would be Sennacherib and Ashurbanipal. Okay, the Neo-Babylonian Empire. So the first Babylonian Empire was done by the Amorites. Okay, that's Hammurabi. But now we have the Neo-Babylonians, which are the Chaldeans. And this is the empire that destroys Jerusalem, burns the temple. Father Leah and his family just got out of town in time before these folks showed up. One king is Nabopolassar. He gained control of Babylon, rebelled against Assyria. But the most famous one is Nebuchadnezzar. That's not actually his name. This is something like Profile of a Mule or something. What does this mean? Remember what it said, Rachel?
He will save the mule.
He will save the mule, which is not what his name actually was. It's Nebuchadnezzar. But he destroyed Jerusalem. I don't know why there's a closed parentheses there. He expanded and ornamented Babylon. He built these beautiful walls around the city with blue tiles on them. And they've actually been recreated in Berlin. So this Ishtar Gate is one of the things that we will see while we are in Berlin. There were 7 so-called wonders of the ancient world. You don't need to know these. Let's let someone show off. Can anyone name the 7 wonders of the ancient world?
The pyramids.
Pyramids of Egypt, Hanging Gardens of Babylon. He had a wife from Persia, from Media, and she missed the mountains, so he built some mountains. Stonehenge is an interesting wonder of the world. These are all, this shows the bias of classicists. This is all going to be Near Eastern classical stuff. Once again, those are wonderful things, but it's all going to be in the Near East or Greece. Okay.
That's the statue of Zeus.
The statue of Olympian Zeus, Colossus of Rhodes, Mausoleum of Halicarnassus, which we will see, Lighthouse of Rhodes, and someone else. That was the Lighthouse of Alexandria. Well, we'll come to me. Okay, but anyway, this is the one we're worried about right now, is the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. And then the last king of Babylon, this is the one that Daniel supposedly worked for, didn't like Babylon because he was a Chaldean. He liked to go out in the desert and worship the moon. And that made the priest of Babylon upset, so they eventually killed him and destroyed him. Okay? So that is as detailed as we will ever get in these historical periods. So Friday I'll try to do both the study guide and a PowerPoint like that. Put them both on Learning Suite and have them when you're doing your reading. As I mentioned in my email, you'll have much more detail in here than you need. It's like going to a Shakespeare play. When my wife first started taking me to the Shakespeare Festival, she said, Eric, you only understand 60 or 70% of what you hear. Just let it roll over you. Just kind of have the impression. So be looking for the names and terms I put on the study guide, but this is one time when I actually want you looking at pictures. Okay? More so than anything else, I want you to be looking for these elements. And did I post that on Learn Suite, Jake? Did I put the artifact list? What Jake and I are in the process of doing,
No, I don't think it's on there yet.
it's not on there yet. Oh, it's in Dropbox.
Yeah.
It says artifacts.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but I want to show you what I'm doing because I'm excited because I'm weird. I've wanted to do this trip for a very, very long time. So all these things that I've been teaching and talking about all this time, and I've seen myself, it's just kind of different when you sign in with Google. Can I just do it this way? Yes. So what I am doing is every picture in this book and in some of the museum books I have, we're putting on a spreadsheet so that, of course, transfers, IAS, artifact list. Okay, so we're doing the artifacts, what kind it is, what civilization it is, something interesting, and where it is. And what I'm going to do when we're all done, if any of you are used to Excel, you know, I can have little tabs across the bottom. I'm going to sort this by museum. So I will have a list of everything in the British Museum, everything in the Louvre, everything in the Pergamon Museum, everything in the Vatican Museum that we're looking at. And I'm going to provide you with a checklist. And so what you can do when you go to the museum is I'm going to say, here are 10 artifacts I want you to find today. Then I'll leave you some blanks for 5 others. And in fact, Jake and I haven't worked out the details of it yet. 25 of us going around the museum together is going to be weird. Okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to have a Google Doc set up where for each, well, British Museum is twice, Louvre is twice, we have 2 different days. So on the Near Eastern Egyptian British Museum Day, you'll pick one artifact that you're really interested in. And we're going to have a Google Doc and you sign up for it. And the first, say, 4 or 5 people who sign up for that artifact get it. So once it's filled, you have to find another one. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you in groups of 3 or 4 where each one of you in the group have done one of the artifacts. So when you go on your checklist, there'll be someone in your group who will know a lot about it, who can kind of explain it to the rest of you. And then you'll have the group leaders who won't have to do any teaching, but then what you'll do is you'll keep the checklist for the group. And you'll have 5 other artifacts you find them to just write down, and the group leader will turn it in to me. So in other words, it will give you kind of your own guide to the museum, but you'll be each other's docents in a sense. And as I said, what I'm thinking of doing is having these all set up by the time the semester's over. I don't know what you're doing in May, but you're not going to be as busy as you're going to be this 20 days. And so what I'd suggest is that's when you look in Learning Suite at the resources I'm putting together, and you can write your 3 to 4 paragraphs on that artifact, keep it on Dropbox or on a thumb drive or on your tablet, and then you get the legwork done before the trip, does that make sense? And I feel good about that because it's a spring term class, but we're only gone 3 of the weeks. So I thought, let's just do the writing part, the first half of the term when we're not on the road, and the checklist will be how I demonstrate to IAS we're actually doing work there. Does that make any sense? So what I'm doing now, and I did assign these, and you're not going to ever have to read these for class, but I'd like you to be aware that they're there. So for instance, I have spent, for my research account, an immense amount of money on museum books. So for instance, I just got this book from the British Library, and I had Jake scan the 4 chapters that were germane to Mesopotamian stuff. I have to go to student view to download, I think I do. Okay. So, for instance, here is this lovely book, and the first chapter is called Excavations at Nimrud, and this is a background chapter. It talks about how they actually found these things in the Iraqi desert. Then, if we were to go back to Learning Suite, here is this one I was talking about, the Lion Hunt of Ashurbanipal. Okay, and it's just 3 or 4 pages. Okay, so it has a little description. It shows you the artifact has some captions. Or we can go back here, the Queen of the Night. I like this one. Okay, so it's this, we're not sure exactly which Babylonian goddess this is. We think it's Ishtar. For those of you who had IAS 201 with me, you may have heard the descent of Ishtar. There's an ancient Babylonian text which makes me weep. So anyway, it's this lady. So if someone wants to be on my good side, pick that artifact. Okay, and then this one is really cool. This is Sumerian. They discovered this cemetery. It's called the Royal Cemetery at Ur. And here are the headdresses and necklaces of the queen, for instance. And here is a little medicine box, and here's a little hat rack. I'm not sure what that is. Here's a heart base. So anyway, when we get to that point at the end of the semester and you sign up for your artifacts, okay, so you'll have 2 from British Museum, 2 from the Louvre, 1 from Berlin, 1 from Munich, 1 or 2 from Athens, 1 or 2 from Rome. So you probably have 10 of these 3 to 5 page reports to do. You'll sign up for them. We'll make sure they're distributed among the class. These are the kinds of things you need. You don't need to go to the library and do any research on them. Between Wikipedia, which in this case is allowable, online resources, and the things I post, that's all you'll need to just kind of describe the artifact. And as I said, my goal is, when I put you in the groups, and they'll be different in each museum, so you get to know each other this way. So you'll have one group of people, British Museum, Ancient Near East and Egypt. The next day you have another group of people. You'll know people in the Louvre. But each one of you in your group will know 1 or 2 artifacts, and you'll be able to teach each other. Okay. Does that sound like it's a way to do the academic portion of this? Okay, let's see. Let's take out a piece of paper, and I will try to be fair and generous here. And let's just do our first reading quiz. And as I said, you'll want to turn this off in a moment, because I want them to.
I'll turn off when you start giving the answers.
Yeah, when we start giving it. Okay, I guess they
Then I'll do a 2-part video, I guess.
That's fine. That's fine.
Sorry.
That's okay. Really need like a half sheet of paper.
Yeah, there'll be 10 questions.
Oh, maybe not.
Okay. All right, this is question 1. The first civilization that you read about was called the period was called the early dynastic period. What was the name of the civilization? Number 1. Question 2, what was the name of the writing system that this civilization developed? And it's the writing system that everyone else uses in Mesopotamia. Question 3. Cuneiform is usually on clay tablets. But when it is on stone, when it's on a big piece of stone, a monumental piece of stone, it has one of two names. You can give me either one, the thin flat one or the thick square one. Okay? So what is the name of one of the kinds of stones that is used for this writing, this carving, that's carved? Question 4. The next period is called the Old Akkadian period. So question 4 is, what is the name of the famous king of Akkadia? He had the first Mesopotamian empire. Starts with an S. I'm horrible at giving these quizzes. I always feel bad start giving clues.
Don't feel bad.
Question 5. What was the name of the king who produced the famous law code? Question 6. What was the name of the period or the civilization for this king? Question 6. Okay, for questions 7 and 8, because these are hard names, I'm going to give you the names of the king, and you just tell me something about them. Okay. So we're in the Neo-Assyrian period. Question 7. Tell me something about Sennacherib. And question 8, tell me something about Ashurbanipal. Questions 9 and 10 will go with the most famous Mesopotamian king as far as the Bible is concerned, Nebuchadnezzar. So question 9 is, what was the name of his period or his empire? And question 10, give me something famous that he built. Okay, see, that wasn't terrible. Okay, so once again, next Tuesday, we'll start the class with the reading quiz on Egypt. So you'll have to kind of get familiar with all this before we start. And for those